Caffeinated Thoughts Podcast. Hi, this is Shane Vander Hart. Welcome back to another episode. This week, I'd like to pick back up our look at Iowa Senate District 1. That seat is currently held by David Johnson, who was a Republican, but prior to the November 2016 election, he left the Republican Party mainly out of protest against President Trump being the nominee and became an independent. So now we have a three-way Republican primary. A couple episodes ago, we spoke with Zach Whiting, one of the candidates, and yesterday I had a phone conversation with Brad Price, who's also running for the Republican nomination. But before we get to that conversation, first a word from our sponsors.
At American Principles Project, we believe that human dignity should be at the heart of public policy. We work in all 50 states and in Washington, D.C. to promote life, religious freedom, local control over education, authentic economic progress for working Americans, and a return to constitutional principles such as federalism. Want to help American Principles Project? Visit our website today, AmericanPrinciplesProject.org. That's American Principles, P-L-E-S, project.org. Sign up for email updates. Help us out. We want to work with you. That's AmericanPrinciplesProject.org.
Hi, this is Brian Myers. When I needed a better life insurance plan, I found it with Travis Risvold of Modern Woodmen of America. When I first met Travis, he wasn't like some other life insurance agents that can be pushy and try to get you to buy something. Travis just made himself available to me. That was it. He told me to let him know if and when I needed anything, and he stayed in touch. When the day came and I did need to make some changes with my life insurance, Travis met with me and walked me through several options so I could make an informed decision. Ultimately, it was the best decision for my situation. So if you need a life insurance plan that makes sense for you, call my friend Travis Risvold with Modern Woodmen. His number is 515-883-0029. That's Travis Risvold with Modern Woodmen. He can help you find the life insurance you need. Call him at 515-883-0029.
And we're back. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Brad Price, Republican candidate in Iowa Senate District 1. Well, hey, Brad, thank you so much for taking time to talk with myself and our listeners. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about your run in Iowa Senate District 1 is, it's a question I ask every candidate. Why are you running?
I'm running to make a difference. I'm a business owner. I look at things from a business perspective. I believe that I can bring a lot of experience to the district and the state of Iowa and help them through a multitude of things that just need to be covered and to, make life better for the constituents that are out there.
Okay, so Tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, what business do you own? What's your background and experience?
An Iowa boy, born in Fort Dodge, Iowa, moved to Spencer my 8th grade, and been in the area ever since. Fortunate enough to get in business early on in my life, right after high school. And I am in the pizza restaurant business,
okay,
and have been for 40 years this year, actually. And along with that, also in a real estate business, own some mini storage properties as well as small industrial properties, both in Clay County and in Dickinson County.
Okay. All right. So education takes up about 57% of the general fund. That's K-12 as well as Regent University system and community colleges. So education is like a huge thing that any state senator is going to have to deal with. When you hear people talk about local control of education, what does that mean to you? What would that look like?
I think it would be important that, not every area, Des Moines versus being in, Spencer, Iowa or Spirit Lake, Iowa, things are different. So I don't think local control of most of their curricular activities and some of the things that they're trying to teach is a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. The teachers I talk to, say that they feel that they would benefit from that. I am definitely, against Common Core.
Okay.
I believe that, I guess, personally, I've got grandkids, 6 of them that are in school here in Spirit Lake, Iowa. And, when I see them come home with their homework and look at the situation of, especially, I'll just take math, for instance, and realize how they've got to get from point A to point B.
Right.
And then from a business perspective, I have, staff that work for me that or maybe, in their junior or senior year of school. And if the calculator doesn't tell them how to do it, it doesn't happen. So I don't know if it's being performed in the correct manner. So those are really my,
Right.
on the touch with those issues.
Are you a member of your local chamber?
I am.
Okay. One thing that's frustrated me, and maybe you could speak to this as a chamber member, is that it seems like the Iowa's Chambers of Commerce, as well as the Iowa Association of Business and Industry, have lined up against any bill that has been filed to eliminate Common Core. The schools, or revert back to local control, or at least at the very least to our standards what they were before the Common Core was adopted. Why do you think that is, and is that a thing of frustration for you as a business owner?
It is frustrating for me as a business owner, and I wish I could speak for them. I wish I knew more about how and why they feel that way. I don't know if it's I definitely don't hear it from the educators. So I would think that they would side with that side of it, and I don't hear that from the business owners. So I really don't know why they have a platform against that at all.
Okay, moving on here. Another big thing with education is that we hear a lot about funding. It's not being funded enough. It's not being funded enough. Are you satisfied with the level of education funding in Iowa, or do you think you think there's ways we could restructure school aid to better meet the needs of local school districts, as well as how do we approach this in a way when we're trying to keep, the budget's been growing, year after year, and how do we keep state spending down while making sure education's funded? What would be your approach as a state senator?
You hit on 2 things, and one is definitely the cost of educating our youth, and we've rose that dollars up over the last few years quite a bit. We're number 4, number 5 in the state as far as or in the country what we pay our teachers. But most importantly, where is that money? How are we spending it, and how are we looking at per district? I would say the best thing to do is get our educators on board with communication to them to understand from our standpoint what kind of dollars we have to use that they are available to them to use the best of their knowledge and not have any waste within their school district. So we're going to have to communicate that in the future, because we can't just continue to raise our funds and expect that the taxpayers are going to continue to pay those numbers.
Okay.
So I think that's, in my eyes, I would definitely like to see, we need to take care of our teachers, no doubt about it, but we also need them to buy into the fact that if we continue to raise fees, what's it going to do to our state, and what's it going to do economically to our state?
Right. What's your view of school choice? There's education savings account bill that's kind of hanging, I don't know if we're going to see any movement on it this year, but that's something that school choice advocates have been trying to push, is making sure money can follow kids to, in this particular bill, it'd be just to private schools, and only public school kids or students who have been in the public school for at least a year or new kindergartners would be eligible for this particular education savings grant as this current bill's written. Is that something you favor, or do you think that it should be a different approach?
I think there should be a little bit different approach. I'll tell you, I've seen other school districts in other states, not in our state necessarily, but where you all of a sudden have this move to fund private schools, and then what happens is the public schools start to fail because you take too many dollars away from that particular venue and move it to another one. Now, I don't know how much it'll affect in Northwest Iowa, but the state of Iowa itself, it definitely could have an effect on those public schools, and you wouldn't want to defund those public schools. So I feel we've got to keep that money in place.
Okay. So how is there any way you see being able to expand parental choice in education? If it's not through an education savings account, do you favor other methods?
Yes, I'm definitely not against the private school sector if that's would be the case. Absolutely.
Okay.
That money comes from other than the state, I'm fine with that.
Okay. So moving on here to, we're kind of touching on the state budget, and obviously the budget's been an area of concern because on one hand, Democrats will say that we're not funding enough, and thinking even discussing tax reform right now is irresponsible. And on the other side, people like myself believe that we don't have a revenue problem, we have a spending problem. How do you address if you were to be elected, how would you address tax reform? Do you think that's something we should pursue? And how do you think Iowa should approach its budgeting process? Because it seems like our revenue estimating conference, they've just been getting it wrong last few quarters.
I believe that we need to be very competitive. When you have states that are neighboring you that have no state tax, and then you have state tax, and you can see their growth versus our growth. So that's our competition. So we need to continue to get our revenues up. And there's only really, to me, in the state of Iowa, is a couple of things. One is that we need growth to have that happen. So you've got to have some sort of reform to keep that tax low, to grow. It's kind of it's kind of hits you both sides. You got to pay your bills, but on the other hand, but we need revenue, and we need to be responsible for that revenue. When that revenue comes in, we have to know what we're spending our money on. And again, I'm in business, and the people who work for me, I make them responsible for their department. So they buy in. They're part of it. They're part of the expenses. And I don't know if that's how the state works, but I would definitely foresee working on that.
Okay.
The second thing I believe about tax, and I know that the federal government's working on this, but the state of Iowa needs the federal government to work on this, is that we need to see our e-commerce business in all fashions, not just somebody like Amazon, taxed. Collect tax and pay tax. And I feel that because our local merchants have to do so. So why is that same venue or that same item being brought into the state of Iowa and not being taxed?
Okay. One of the big expenditures at the state level would be property tax backfilling for counties and cities and school districts after the property tax reform bill was passed. Is that something that should be revisited in your mind? What should that, or should it be entirely eliminated or left alone, and why?
Again, you're asking a guy that's in business, has multitude of properties. I benefited, I'll be honest with you, about the reduction in property taxes from a commercial standpoint. Am I saying that it needs to be looked at? Maybe we need to look at assessments versus looking at where our tax dollars come from. It's really not always necessarily about, every county has its own assessments, and they think differently. And so it's very frustrating on my part to see an assessment in one area for one property that I think it should sell for XYZ versus another county where it should sell for for something completely different.
Right.
And it should be based on sales. So I believe that we need to be competitive in our property tax. There's no doubt about it, from not just us, but from the agriculture side as well. So we've just got to be very careful about what we're doing. To just continually tax the business sector is not going to help us.
Right. Well, yeah, I understand that. But right now, Iowa's paying counties for their perceived loss after that property tax reform bill was passed.
Correct.
Some counties probably, did see a loss. Other counties like, Dallas County and Polk County are doing fine. Should the state of Iowa keep paying counties and cities that may have already made up that original loss after the property tax reform bill was passed?
No, they shouldn't.
Okay, all right. So moving on, another thing that has been under debate this particular legislative session is in the area of life, and that's a heartbeat abortion ban bill that's currently stuck in the Iowa House. What kind of pro-life legislation would you support?
I'm pro-abortion, so I
Okay.
believe it blames the conception. I guess the only issue in my mind is when the mother is in the fact of in a birthing situation and a doctor has to make a call from life. It's a fine line. I understand that, but I still think that doctor should have the right to make that decision.
Okay, all right. Are you against taxpayer defunding Planned Parenthood and abortion providers of taxpayer funding?
I am.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that. Also, wanted to ask another thing. Another issue that we have seen in Iowa, for instance, is with kind of the on one hand, you don't want to see businesses discriminate, but on the other hand, we want to make sure we protect religious liberty and religious conscience of business owners. Probably the most high-profile case would have been when with Gort's House in Grimes. They were a wedding venue, and they while they had homosexual customers come in for their, I think they had a florist shop in there and some other things, as well as a place where they serve food. The restaurant. So they had customers, but they denied a same-sex couple from having a wedding there. They were later a complaint was filed against them to the state, and they were found at fault. Do you believe that business owners? Is there a way you think that business owners' religious liberty can be protected in instances like this?
I just think you got to follow the First Amendment, and those religious freedoms are there, and they're just very important. And I think that's really what we have to do, from that standpoint.
Okay, all right. And last question I have is basically just catch-all. Is there anything you'd like our listeners to know about yourself, and maybe on an issue we didn't touch on?
I just want to let them know that I am here to grow and here to help the state of Iowa grow, to help District 1 grow. I want to be their voice in the state. I want to listen to them and bring their ideas forward. I'm definitely a person that likes to work with multitude of people. I've done that all my life. That's really what I do. I really believe communication is the answer to, knowledge, that people know what their state is doing and why they're doing it, and to grow with that in mind.
And where can people learn more about your candidacy?
They can learn more. I have a website, and it's bprice4iowasenate.com, and email Brad at bprice4iowasenate.com, and be happy to answer any questions if we didn't catch them today. More than willing to email me, and we can absolutely. I would be happy to return a call. So.
All right, great. Well, hey, Brad, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye. And that concludes this episode of the Caffeinated Thoughts Podcast. If you happen to be listening to our podcast somewhere other than on our website, please be sure to check out caffeinatedthoughts.com. Again, that's caffeinatedthoughts.com. Or you could just Google Caffeinated Thoughts and it'll show up at the top of your search screen. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, sign up for our email updates. That way you don't miss a single article. Hey, this is Shane Vander Hart. Until next time, my friends, take care.